Jesus said, it's more difficult for a rich man to enter the kingdom of heaven than it is for a camel to go through the eye of a needle. And this statement has great significance for the spiritual inquiry. When heard from the divided mind, a mind that's divided against itself, a mind that's divided against the world, a mind that's divided against reality. This statement has a meaning that is limited in its depth. Somehow it shrinks from its true glory and comes to mean that a person of material wealth is not worthy of God's love. And this belief has infiltrated some of our culture, even the spiritual culture, so that money is seen to be evil, that there is a split between money and spirituality, between material comfort or material wealth and spirituality. But that's not really what I'm here to talk about. Although that's an interesting inquiry in itself, or a useful inquiry in itself. I'm here to look at the deeper meaning of that statement. To look at it from the perspective of wholeness rather than division. To look at it through the eyes of divinity rather than the eyes of ego. So this rich man that this statement refers to, in its deepest meaning, in its broadest meaning, is referring to the acquisitive nature, not inquisitive, acquisitive nature of the separate self, of the egoic mind. Its tendency to accumulate, all forms, whether those forms are material forms or even psychological forms. The tendency to grasp, possess, clutch, hold on to, the world of form, whether that be in its most obvious form, money, or relationship, or security, whatever forms those come in. Recognition, status, none of which in themselves are not worthy of experiencing. But when believed to be true fulfillment, simply become baggage that we carry through our lives. And this baggage prevents us from knowing our true nature, where true fulfillment lies. So very often, or most often, we look for love as a commodity to be found within relationships, something that someone else gives us. Or we look for recognition as something that someone can give us, something to have, something to possess. And when all these external forms are seen to be unfulfilling at some point, then the search turns within to the accumulation of spiritual forms, whether that's spiritual knowledge, spiritual truths, spiritual experiences, spiritual beliefs. So the world of form is not just the world of things that we can touch with our hands or see with our eyes, but they're also all inner forms created by the mind, the imagination. These are forms too. And these are also held on to, looked for, grasped, possessed, owned, as if they would give us full, true fulfillment. So the invitation always in spiritual inquiry is not the accumulation of more spiritual beliefs, not even the accumulation of any picture of what awakening or enlightenment is. Very often we have a spiritual experience, an experience of awakening or transcendence, call it what you will. And this creates a subtle image in the mind, which is another form that is clung to. It's like we have a shopping basket, a spiritual shopping basket. And we go spiritual shopping, adding more concepts, more ideas, more experiences, more states, whether that state is one of peace, of one of love, one of spaciousness, one of silence. We accumulate these experiences as pictures in our minds of what it is that we're looking for or think we should have in order to be spiritual, in order to be awakened, in order to be enlightened, in order to be free. So So the invitation is to empty the shopping basket, not fill it up. You can't enter the kingdom of heaven with a shopping basket. So let's just for a moment look at this kingdom of heaven. From the limited perspective, from the divided mind, from the eyes of separation, the kingdom of heaven is some imaginary place of bliss, nirvana, unending peace, happiness, love, whatever. Some place where we can finally rest and receive God's love, life's love, the love of existence. And so we're constantly striving towards this place with our shopping basket. The deeper meaning of the kingdom of heaven is an inner dimension of consciousness that has no content. There is neither a shopping basket nor anything in it. Consciousness itself has no content, even though all form arises in consciousness and as consciousness. This inner dimension of beingness has nothing to do with any of our ideas of how it is, of what it should feel like or what it should look like. In order to rest deeply in the inner state of beingness, not as a state that comes and goes, but it's the very essence of you, the very essence of your life, then you're required to meet life naked and innocent, in nakedness and in innocence. To meet life without those subtle beliefs that we carry that say it should or shouldn't be this way or that way. To meet reality, to meet what appears in your experience as nakedly and as innocently as a newborn babe, as nakedly and innocently as a blade of grass just peeking its head through the soil, as nakedly and innocently as a snowflake that lands on the ground. There is no baggage in this. So not only is it the requirement for the spiritual shopping basket to be emptied, it's to actually throw away the basket itself. Not just the contents, but the very container for those contents. What does that mean? The container is that tendency to take ownership of what is experienced. To take ownership of what is being experienced is to wrap the self around the experience. And as the self wraps itself around an experience, there is already separation from the experience. And in that separation, the divided mind makes a commentary on whether it likes or doesn't like, whether it's good or bad, whether it's spiritual or not spiritual, whether it's something to be grasped onto or something to be rejected. The kingdom of heaven is a place without division. It's a place in you without division. It's the verticality of your beingness. And it's always here. It's not something to be found, not something to be achieved. It is always here. So it's not a matter of looking for something or going anywhere other than where you are. But it's a matter of seeing where there is division in your experience. In seeing where there is division in your experience, and recognizing that that division in your experience is a reflection of the horizontality of your mind, thinking mind, small mind. That whole false notion, that whole false construct can dissolve in that moment. And then there is just consciousness. And there is no separation in that. When you rest in the inner dimension of beingness, then you don't have to try to be present. You don't have to try to be love. You don't have to try to be awakened. You don't have to try to be spiritual. There is nothing you need to do and nowhere you need to go. Because presence, love, openness, spaciousness, silence are the very qualities of consciousness. They're not commodities to go and pick off the spiritual shelf and add to your basket. They're the very qualities of beingness. As the light of that beingness moves through you and gets refracted into the world, it's a deep rest. It's a deep rest. Deep rest that is devoid of content and yet includes the totality of all that is experienced. In that sense, it's very rich. It's exquisite in its fullness. It's not devoid of content and then very stark and cold. It's devoid of content because it's not identified with content. And so there is no grasping onto content. That content flows freely through you. All forms, whether they be thoughts, feelings, emotions, sensations, or events, situations, circumstances. All this flows through you freely. In that sense, divine intelligence, which arises out of wholeness, is the driving impulse of your life. When you see through the eyes of wholeness, you will see wholeness inherent at the nature of everything. When you see through the eyes of oneness, you will see the oneness at the very core of everything. When you see through the eyes of presence, everything that is experienced will vibrate in that presence. Nothing will be rejected or denied. When you see through the eyes of love, which is the same as saying if you see through the eyes of unboundedness, then everything is included, welcomed into your experience. Nothing is rejected. And then it moves through you freely, without attachment, without sticking. When you stop clinging to forms, forms will stop sticking to you. Then all forms are free to live out their purpose. As Jesus said, the kingdom of heaven is here, but you do not have eyes to see. So this capacity to see clearly where there is division in your experience, is the key to living here on earth as the kingdom of heaven. It's the birth of light into the world, the light of awakeness. Yeah, for most of us, to reject parts of the self, to reject those parts that we believe to be unworthy of entering the kingdom of heaven. Not good enough, not perfect enough, not lovable enough. Go.
I'm just wondering, my mind is saying what to do.
Very often there's the attempt to fix those parts, to make them more lovable, to make them more worthy, to make them more perfect. But those attempts are part of the baggage. Those attempts create the baggage because they're another accumulation of a belief that says, if only this part of me was better or more lovable, then I'd be worthy of God's love or awakening or enlightenment or freedom. We can substitute any of those words. Some belief that if only we were something more than we already are, or better than we already are, then finally we would be what? We would be what? Loved? At peace? Totally fulfilled? So the invitation in that is to really see, to feel, if you like, or at least to inquire. Yeah? Not mentally as another belief system, but to inquire somewhere with our beingness, with our openness, as to whether that's true. Is it really true that if you were better, more perfect, more this or that, you would be what? At peace? More spiritual? More awakened? Is that possible? And even to not know, to not have an answer to that, it's not about looking for an answer to that, trying to work it out. Well, will it or won't it? Or, yeah. but to recognize in that very dilemma, that very question, of if I'm more this or more that, I will be more this or more that. That very question itself, without an end answer, that very question itself is the indication that, and use whatever metaphor speaks to you, something is being added to the basket. Some attempt to accumulate something, to acquire something, to find something, to get something other than what is truly here and fully here right now. That in itself, if you can recognize that, then the possibility is that something in you, in that recognition, just lets go of that. Just lets go of that. Because it's division. When you see that division only creates more division, then you can recognize division and finally let go of that. Not let go of it because you've arrived at another state that is better than the previous one. Not let go because you found something, but let go because you finally see that division itself is creating or perpetuating the very lack of peace or fulfillment or love that is being craved for. And this is an ongoing recognition, yeah? Ongoing seeing. When we really believe that there's something wrong with us, or that we need to get somewhere else, or fix some part of ourselves, or some part of us isn't good enough, when we really believe that, it's a big sacrifice of that belief in that moment that is required. It's a big sacrifice to let go of that, not to replace it with another belief that says I am good enough. That's just adding to the spiritual shopping basket. It's not about replacing one belief with another. It's about dissolving that whole dichotomy of good enough or not good enough. It's dissolving all polarity, all duality. And in that dissolvement, there's no self-referencing. Yeah? There's no self looking back on the self, believing itself to be good enough or not good enough. It's raw. It's naked. Right here. Just like a baby. When you look into the eyes of a newborn babe or a very young baby, a few months old, there's just openness. There's no self-referencing in that. Simply consciousness meeting reality. In some ways you can say that's devoid of content. It's devoid of the content of self. And yet everything is exquisitely, sensitively, openly experienced in that. The whole of the world comes into that experience. But it's not a divided experience. Yeah?
But to be in that state and live day to day, it seems like one has to make those differentiations, those decisions, those choices based on judgments, on what is working, what is not working here. And I think that's where I lose it when I feel like I have to make judgments, then I'm now, does this make sense? It's hard to put into words, but
Sure.
yes.
So you're saying that when you navigate the world, the everyday world, which is the world of form, there are certain, what you're calling judgments that need to be made in order to make the right choices. How about changing that word of judgment to discernment?
I'm not sure I see a difference when I...
The judgments that come from the habitual mind or the conditioned mind, yeah? The mind or self that is conditioned by your personal history, our cultural history, and all of this, yeah? Those are the judgments that keep you in division, yeah? The conditioned responses or reactions to life. So you do not see the world as it is, but as you believe it to be. That's the realm of beliefs. That's what conditioning is. Beliefs about yourself, beliefs about others, beliefs about how it is, beliefs about how the world is, beliefs about love, beliefs about spirituality, all of this. There is another dimension of being in which the innate intelligence of life is the guiding force, not the conditioned self. So you, as a separate, apparently separate Linda, appears to make choices, but is actually simply responding to that, to the movement of that intelligence. That has a very different quality to the divided state. It comes from wholeness. So of course you may choose to turn left rather than right. You may choose to eat this rather than that. You may choose to go here rather than there. You may choose to speak to this person rather than that person, etc., etc. But those choices do not have to come from judgment, a judgment that is based on conditioned beliefs. Yeah? Mm-hmm. It has a different quality to it, a different depth to it, a different naturalness to it, an organicness to it. It's like you're one with the movement of life. And there is freedom in that. It's like life's flowing through you freely, as opposed to you being a separate self, making things happen. Does that?
It does.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I'll just say one more thing about that. The conditioned judgments are the ones which create in your experience a shrinking away from the very experience you're having.
I think that's very helpful,
Yeah.
because I think that it's sometimes hard to know whether it's coming from the depths of you to the, you're really facing it without judging, with that discernment. And sometimes I question, where am I? And that helps to kind of sense it.
When you are open to the totality of your experience, without recoiling, without rejecting, without arguing with that experience, yeah? Whatever that experience is, without shrinking from it, without trying to manipulate it or contort it or change it or fix it. Your experience is your experience, however that's being experienced, yeah? Whether it's that experience is an energetic experience, yeah? At the deepest level. Yeah? What's here, moving in your life in this moment and this moment and this moment, is as it is. When you are open in that, without any argument with it, without any shrinkage from it, then you can move from, that's wholeness, yeah? You are one with the experience. There is the deepest acceptance that this experience is as it is now. And I'm talking about moment by moment by moment, because that experience, if you like, changes in each moment, yeah? It's a fresh experience in each moment, as if you could chop up that moment, life into moments, but it's one endless moment. In that openness, your what appears as a decision on the surface comes from that wholeness, yeah? Rather than from the divided state, which has a very different impact and a different quality to it. Yeah? All forms are an expression of the one consciousness. So in that sense, all forms have a life. All forms are born and all forms die. Whether that form is the form of your body, or the form of one thought, or the form of an object, or the form of your life. Yeah? So everything has a birth and a death. So in that sense, when we stop clutching onto those forms, possessing those forms, holding on to them, then we release them to have their natural lifespan. Yeah? Because all forms yearn to come home to the emptiness of consciousness, which is source. All forms yearn to die back into source, from whence they came, including the form of your life and the form of your body. Yeah? So that all forms can be reborn out of that consciousness into a new form. That's the ever-proliferating nature of life. So if you like, it is of service to freedom to stop trying to hold on to form. Yeah, all forms, even the form of an emotion or a physical sensation. When we hold on to it, yeah, either an emotion that we really like or an emotion that we don't like, pushing it away, that's also a kind of holding on to it. Yeah, we're claiming ownership of it and saying, I don't like that, I'm going to get rid of it. Either of those are not allowing that energy, that energetic form, to dissolve and resolve itself in emptiness, so that it can be reborn as another form. Yeah, so it's of service, it's an act of love or an act of compassion to allow all forms to move freely through you and your experience, so that they die back into the unbounded nature of consciousness, and then can, if you like, reincarnate as another form. It's an act of compassion. We're so busy bothering life. And then life bothers you. You're bothered by life because you're busy bothering life. If we stop bothering life, stop trying to fix it and change it and manipulate it and make it conform to our ideas of how it should be. And when I say life, I mean this moment, this unfolding ever moment, this experience that you're having. This experience, we're so busy trying to change it, making it something else other than this experience. So then we're bothered by life. Well, it makes sense, doesn't it? Yeah, so stop bothering life, and then life will stop bothering you. Surely that's the greatest act of compassion. So we bother each other in relationship. We bother our parents because we blame them for the things they did wrong. We bother our children so that they can be better than they are. We bother our pets because they're not behaving themselves. We're always bothering something. Yeah? Trying to make it other than what it is. That doesn't mean we shouldn't have discernment or guidance. But when discernment and guidance come from freedom, and the whole of the universe sings, rejoices, because it's free of your ideas of how it should be. That's when you see heaven on earth. That's when you see through the eyes of Christ consciousness. Through the eyes of wholeness, not separation. See, this beingness is complete in itself. It doesn't need anything or want anything to add to itself. It doesn't mean as you go through your life you shouldn't have wants or desires, that you shouldn't express your creativity, that you shouldn't make choices or decisions, that you shouldn't take care of yourself, your body, that you shouldn't have a home or a structure to be safe in, that you shouldn't have a relationship because love isn't found in a relationship, it's found in you. It doesn't mean that all those things are not part of the human experience of the movement of life through you. But when beingness, which is complete in itself and needs nothing, no thing from another or from the world or from God, when beingness is the guiding force, the guiding light, because you are one with that. Then all those forms in your life, whether it be a relationship or some creation, artistic expression, or the work you do, are not there to make you complete. They are forms that come into your life to serve the highest expression of existence as it bubbles through you, as it dances through you. And then everything that you do and every relationship that you are in or are experiencing has a very different quality to it. There is a lightness to it. There is a joy to it. There is a naturalness to it. It can cannot give you anything more than what you already are. So it is not seen as a commodity. It comes and it goes. It comes, it dances with you, as long as that dance is part of divine intelligence, and then it leaves. And that coming and going is not seen either as an achievement when it comes, or as a tragedy when it goes. It is seen as a blessing all the way through. All the way through. And that's everything. Everything that is in your life. Including your body. It is not a tragedy when that body disappears. Returns to source. To be reborn. So then there is a great freedom in birth and death, in the totality of life, in all forms. And in the coming and going of those forms.